I'll get started, at least a little blurb. And I know Jen is.
Recording in progress.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the March 23rd, 2023 school committee meeting. In keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board members shall be remote and attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live on Facebook and recorded on ECAP. This meeting is open to the public and will take questions via the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Please make sure to include your full name and address, and we'll do our best to answer all questions. However, we will not read questions that have already been answered. All right. So, first up is minutes. The first minutes are the Easton School Committee. It's a regular meeting, Thursday, March 9th, 2023. Any questions, comments, or edits? No? All right. Can I get, oh, there's Jen. Can I get a motion to accept, well, Jen, before I do that, do you have any questions, edits on the March 9th regular meeting? Okay.
Nope.
Thank you. Up to the regular school committee meeting minutes from Thursday, March 9th, 2023.
Star so moved. Star second.
All right, roll call vote. I think you're muted, Caroline.
Yes. O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
Luca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. The next up is the executive meeting minutes from Thursday, March 9th, 2023. Does anyone want me to hold them? Okay, then I'm looking for either a motion to approve and not release this time, or approve and release at this time.
Wiseman, I make a motion to approve but not release at this time.
Do I have a second?
Second, DeLuca.
All right, roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. And can we bring Kelly over, Chrissy? Hello. Okay.
Hi, everybody.
So this is actually an item that Kelly and I are bringing before you for consideration and a possible vote on a plan for student advisory. We have been working on this off and on throughout this year, been meeting. Just a little back history. There is I was approached, and I think a couple of you, by some students and actually some adults who are interested in having a student advisor on the school committee. I've been doing some research for that. It turns out there's actually a law governing that and giving us guidance as to what that would look like. So Kelly and I met, we kind of brainstormed. I also reached out to some area school committee and some area principals to ask them about what does that look like in their district. And it turns out it looks very different in every district. So then Kelly and I kind of went back to what does this law say and how does it guide us into the best way to form this and to bring a student advisor to our school committee. Then we also met with legal counsel just to run some ideas by them. And then we came back and met again and fine-tuned what we're presenting to you tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Kelly. This is going to reside with her and away.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this. And you guys know, we talked about it at our program of studies that student voice is really important to me. And so giving our students an opportunity to meet with you and connect with you and be a member of your team. about mid-April about the formation of this advisory council, exactly what the opportunity would provide students, what the time commitment is, and ask them to nominate themselves or other people for the positions. And then we would run an election for the candidates who will be part of the advisory council. And guidelines state that this advisory council should meet with you about every other month. So we would set up set times when they would meet with you before school committee meetings to give you feedback on what's going on in the schools and some student experiences. That council then votes for one person to be the representative for the school committee, that non-voting member. So that person will be the liaison, that student between the school committee and the advisory council, even though you'll also still meet with them regularly. What Michelle and I brainstormed was that we would have each of the other 4 students be assigned to a school. So they would meet with that principal, they would go down to that school, especially when we're all in walking distance right now. It's a really huge advantage to us, and they would get the experience of the students and the events and the happenings of those schools before they're meeting with you. So each student would speak on behalf of one of the 4 schools, and then there would be obviously the 5th person is the elected school committee non-voting member. This whole process would be done before the students leave at the end of June. So we would run that initial election. The next step would be to introduce you, the school committee, to the 5 members. And then those 5 members would get to know each other, learn a little bit more about the process, and then elect their school committee non-voting member. And then we would present that person to you in your June meeting. And then these students would meet. I have one second, I'm just going to pull up the timeline. We discussed both for a September, November, January, March, and May meeting, you would meet with the student council, the student advisory council to the school committee, those 5 times a year. And the other times, the school committee representative from the student advisory council would fill you in on things going on in the school. And I think I covered everything. Did I, Mrs. Durance?
And we were thinking that the every other month meeting might be like the half hour before a regular school committee meeting, and then their elected chair would stay on for our meeting. Jackie?
So I just forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead, Caroline. I'll remember in a minute.
Okay, as I may have mentioned, when I first was on school committee, we did have a student advisory committee of 5 students at the high school. It was started that year that I first served on school committee, and not to be one of those moms that, talks about their child, but my son was not only on the advisory committee, he was the chairperson of the advisory committee, but they actually did it a little differently. This is just a thought. It sounds like you've put a great deal of research into this and talked a lot about it, but essentially, I love the idea of a student being assigned to each school, but one of the things that was part of the process back then was that the chair would assign one of the members for each meeting. So in other words, all of the advisory committee members got to be at the table with the school committee, a couple times a year, a few times a year. It's just a thought. Obviously I wasn't involved in the process while Kelly, while you and Michelle were talking this through, but I do think that they really got a kick out of sort of being at the table with the school committee on camera. Anyway, just a thought, but it's not that we've never had this before. We did, and it just sort of faded away a few years in, because there was, I think the students, when they had the election, there was less interest a number of years after that first really great group that we had. But anyway, just thought I'd share that, the historical part of it.
I'm just reading through this again, because I know that we did talk about this, and Kelly can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that, and I don't know if this came from legal counsel or if it was just in the law, is that one person is supposed to attend every meeting. However, maybe we could couple that with Caroline's idea, and there could be a second person that rotates. Those other 4 members could rotate, so they do all have kind of like a vice chair. They could have that experience, so that we're still in compliance, but we are giving people multiple opportunities.
Yeah, you're right. We did discuss this because that was actually some of the feedback we got from other school districts. There are some school districts that did this, but in consulting with our attorney and like really diving into the language of the law, it seems as though there really needs to be one chairperson who is, it says like the said chairperson shall be an ex officio non-voting member of the school committee without right to attend executive session. So when we kind of dove into that with the attorneys, we felt like the best bet would be to keep that one student. However, I believe that you can invite other students to your meetings if we want to give the other members of the committee. And in that way, you could hear, the community can hear directly from each of them about the different schools at every single meeting.
Well, presumably you'd rotate so that you wouldn't have all 5 students there giving reports.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we could rotate one student and then that student could, then throughout the year, you'll hear an in-depth report on each of the schools. Does that make sense?
It will be the chair and then that one student.
Right, right.
So Michelle, would this be, I'm sorry about the background noise. Would this be an agenda item and then every school committee meeting, the chair of this advisory council that sits with us would give a report? Is that kind of what you foresee?
I think that's what Kelly and I were thinking is they would meet, the other 4 would go out to their schools, they would meet and with Kelly and the chair, they would come up with some type of report that would be reported out. And then we could make that person, earlier in the agenda, because what I struggle with is I understand they should, by the law, they can be here at every meeting. Our meetings go really late sometimes. And I wouldn't want them to feel like they're the last agenda item and they have to stay the entire time.
Yeah. I agree with that. Putting them towards the beginning, they'll give a summary report to you and to the community. And that way, if they do have extracurricular activities or homework that they need to attend to, they can leave the meeting early.
Right. I hope that answered your question, Jackie. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
Thank you.
No? Okay. Do you guys like that idea? Or, all right. So we can make a motion. I honestly don't know if it needs to be voted on, but I'd rather vote on it than not. And then we have something official in place. Do we want to add into the motion about the second person, or do you want that to just be something they work out? Caroline, I don't know if you have a preference to that.
I don't, but I have to admit that I didn't look closely enough, and I can't find it on my tiny phone right now. Did we list that as a possible vote?
Yes.
Because I don't think we. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I just didn't remember that part. And
a new student advisory plan.
Then yes, I think we should vote. I didn't remember whether that agenda item, and I can't, as I said on my tiny phone, I can't find it now. That if that included a possible vote.
It legally needs one, but I'd rather do it.
Yeah, and we didn't really have legal counsel involved that many years ago when we had that student. I mean, it was something that some districts were doing, not a lot of districts, but so it must have been something that was permissible under the law. But I don't think there was really direct involvement of legal counsel. I don't recall that at all. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to monopolize the time talking about the old days.
No, not at all. And I think that's a nice compromise, because that person could definitely, they could each have that turn. I think that's a great idea. Any other questions? Jen?
So I know there is, in our policy manual, there is some language about the student advisory committee. So I just wanted to flag that for our policy committee and see if that's something that you'll want to review and update, maybe bring back to us if anything does need to be updated sooner rather than later. Looking at it now, it really just echoes, it really just echoes the language, the MGL language. So I don't think so. We could leave it at that, and then the student advisory committee themselves, I would imagine a good exercise for them will be to put together sort of their own governing documents, kind of their policies and procedures, or sort of how how they're going to run their group and their meetings. And I think as long as it doesn't conflict with, with statute, then I would look to them to figure out what works best.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to make a motion that we accept our new student advisory plan as presented tonight, with the timeline is in your packet for when things will happen. Second?
O'Neill, second.
All right, roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, great. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you, Kelly, for all your work on this. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Michelle, for all your work too. I know
Yeah,
you've
thank
put a
you,
lot
Michelle.
into
It's
this.
great.
Team effort. Team effort.
It's a great collaboration.
Thank you. Up next is the CADCA presentation. Chrissy?
Kelly Reed, our Easton Wings of Hope project coordinator at the YMCA, will present along with Melissa McWilliam, our nurse at Easton Middle School in Richardson Olmsted, the trip that students took to the CADCA National Forum in National Harbor, Maryland in late January into February. We also have a lot of students here with us as well, so I'm going to, when we get them all on, I'll turn it over to Kelly and I'll ask that the students introduce themselves to share this presentation. So I'm going to help Lynn get all the students over, and I'll turn it over to Kelly right now. Kelly Reed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I think we're just waiting on one more student. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay. So our students put together a presentation for you to view, just going over a little bit about, what the trip was, where they went. And so I would love to introduce the students to you. So we have Ryan, Mia, Anna, Marvel, Lily, and Maddie on today. And we also had another student. I don't think I'm missing anyone. You can yell at me if I am missing anyone. V also was on the trip. She was unable to make it today. And our chaperones were Lisa St. Mary and Melissa McWilliam. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the trip, but I have heard wonderful things, and honestly, I'm excited to learn a little bit more today about, what the students have been doing. So our first presenter is going to be Ryan. She's going to open us up about, we're just going to go through a little bit about, what CADCA and Wings of Hope are, what the students did on the trip, what they learned, and then how they're planning on taking back what they learned to their communities to work towards preventing youth substance use. Ryan?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Ryan, and I'm an 8th grader involved in the Youth Easton Wings of Hope Coalition and the 97 Club at our school. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to us about this trip that we went on and what the Easton Wings of Hope Coalition is. So I get asked all the time, what is the Easton Wings of Hope? So the Easton Wings of Hope Coalition is a coalition that strives to make Easton a drug-free community in our town. And as you can see on the slide, over the past 10 to 15 years, drug use in Easton has caused so many issues and tough losses. So the coalition's mission is to prevent youth substance use, and not only in our community, but in others as well. So as youth that want to make a difference, me and 6 other girls that went to Washington, D.C. for CADCA has truly changed us. CADCA stands for the Community Anti-Drug Youth Coalition of America, and it is a nonprofit organization that involves over 5,000 community coalitions that prevent substance use in minors.
Thank you, Ryan. And then our next presenter is going to be Mia. I'm sorry, not Mia, Maddie.
So what we did at CADCA, each day we attended conventions of our choice, and the topics we got to choose from were fentanyl use, mental health, social media use, and drug misuse. And then we were also able to collaborate with other coalitions from Massachusetts. and we learned about their issues that we hadn't heard much about before, such as Narcan and mental health days. And we met with Senator Warren's assistant to discuss these issues further. We also were able to listen to many key speakers share their stories of rehabilitation, life-saving experiences with Narcan, as well as their amazing journey to advocacy.
All right, and then we have Mia.
Can you all hear me all right? Okay, awesome. So my name is Mia Zakos. I'm in 8th grade and I'm part of the Easton Coalition, and I'm the president of the Easton Middle School 97 Club. Before I start, I'd like to just thank all of you for listening today, and it really means a lot to all of us in the Youth Coalition. So I'd like to start off by talking about what we learned at CADCA. So we learned a lot about fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine. It's the cheapest, easiest to manufacture, and most potent. So it's used as a filler in almost every drug. We also talked about fake pills. Fake pills containing fentanyl, if they're taken, 4 out of 10 fake pills containing fentanyl contain a deadly dose, and a deadly dose of fentanyl is only 2 milligrams. And if someone takes one of these fake pills and they survive, they're very likely to use them again. So it's very promising customers for the cartels. Then we talked about mental health. We talked about the connection between mental health, social media, and how this can have a big impact on youth drug use. So suicide is the second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds, and the third leading cause of death for 15 to 19-year-olds. These statistics, they really blew my mind. Social media really has a big negative influence on teen mental health. So US teens spend over 9 hours daily on average on social media, and it's an accepted addiction in today's society. Teens on social media are 5 times more likely to buy cigarettes, 3 times more likely to drink underage, and 2 times more likely to use marijuana. And then lastly, CADCA really connected all of these statistics back to youth drug use. So they talked about how youth are early initiated to drugs. 31% of 12th grade students have used cannabis in the past year. 27% have used nicotine, and 52% of 12th grade students have been exposed or drank alcohol underage in the past year. So overall, they just talked about social media, mental health problems, and how this has a huge impact on youth drug use. And then, like Maddie said, we heard a lot of inspiring stories about key speakers, and they shared their stories, their life-saving stories involving Narcan, their own rehabilitation, and their journey to prevention advocacy. And these stories were truly inspirational and just had a positive influence on all of the kids there. And then we collaborated with other Massachusetts coalitions, and that really inspired us to want to start our own Narcan training program with the Easton Coalition.
Thank you, Mia. All right, and then lastly, we're going to have Marvel present.
Hello, my name is Marvel Nimmer. I am a sophomore at Olive Branch High School, and I want to reiterate the appreciation that we have towards you guys letting us come on and speak to our experiences at CADCA. So overall, as my peers have mentioned, we had some amazing experiences, and from that came so many more new information and plans. So first things first, after learning about Narcan's incorporation into a curriculum elsewhere, we plan to emphasize Narcan training into the health curriculum. Going into high school, I had no idea what Narcan was, and before CADCA, I had very little knowledge of it. There is an optional course in the high school for 11th and 12th graders. Speaking of Narcan, and not many people know how to apply Narcan and how to use it or what it is in the first place. So that's, of course, something that we wanted to dive deeper on, along with the many ways in assisting someone in any situation of substance abuse, which leads me to the bottom point about high schoolers going down to the younger grades and teaching all of the information, because it's statistically proven that the more relevance that is seen between the speaker and the audience, the more information that is retained between all of the audience. So it creates great opportunities for both the high schoolers and the younger students, and ultimately betters the community, as more people are going to be more informed of substance abuse, how to treat it, and how to avoid it. And then finding better ways to get across to students, including techniques that, rather engraving into students' brains that drugs are bad, we can focus on more relevant information and how to bring those statistics into the classroom and how to have tough conversations with the students in order to fully understand the approach within the learning the curriculum throughout. Finally, we would like to prioritize aiding the people that are already in these situations. And I think throughout CADCA, I think it was actually Mia who had come up with the idea of having this mainstream or upstream approach of having people that are at the bottom of the bridge, at the bottom of the river, like saving them before we go on and try to make sure that nobody goes into this river and starts drowning. So yeah.
Thank you, Marvel. And we just want to say thank you to our school committee and school staff who helped make this happen. These students would not have had this amazing opportunity without you. And we just wanted to open it up for if anybody has any questions or comments.
Anyone in the committee have a question?
Michelle?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jen?
Oh, thank you. I have a ton, so rather than, because like my mind is now spinning with so many of your ideas. So thank you for bringing these ideas to us. I just want to say that you have my full support, and I'm excited about what you learned. And I think, we're, as a district and as a parent, really, really struggling with trying to figure out how do we turn this ship around, right? So, because stuff is not trending in the right direction. Things are getting scarier out there. There were some reports from a couple of police departments on Cape Cod recently about people who had overdosed on fentanyl by smoking marijuana that was tainted. They were luckily saved with Narcan. But, even people who aren't seeking opiates or profiling as very high risk takers are at risk in the community with what's out there, with especially fentanyl is really terrifying. So I think I'm really it's frightening, and I really think that we as a district are definitely looking towards students to help us figure out what do you think is going to connect with your peers, right? How do we keep you all safe and healthy? So I'm just really, really excited to see this. Great ideas, and you all give me hope, right? Because it's a tough topic, right? It's heavy, it's rough, it's personal. I've shared this very openly with people. I lost my brother to addiction. He started as a teenager. He died in his 30s. It was terrible. So it's a heavy topic, but to see students like you who are modeling healthy behaviors and going out and learning and taking it on yourself to address this is so, like, you guys are, it just gives me a ton of hope. So thank you for all that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Caroline?
I was wondering if you had heard about the fact that not only is fentanyl being used as a filler for, I think when you said drugs, you meant illicit drugs, but my understanding is that at times it's being added to ADD medication, things like that, and that kids are actually making arrangements to get these drugs unknowingly. I mean, they don't know that fentanyl has been added as a filler through Instagram or TikTok. And there was a horrifying story, I think it was in the New York Times, about a lovely young man who decided to get his ADD medication through, I think it was Instagram, and the dealer it was basically a fentanyl, and his father found him in the morning dead. And this was not a kid who was ever using anything like marijuana or, any of the other like sort of illicit drugs. It was just, and he actually was on an ADD medication, but he had run out and he wanted to get a few pills to tide him over till he could fill his next prescription. So it really is, as Jen Starr, one of the school committee members that just spoke, said, it's horrifying, it's terrifying. I mean, this fentanyl business is just out of control. I'm wondering if you've heard, I kind of remember reading somewhere that there is a move to have Narcan become an over-the-counter drug available to pretty much anyone who seeks it out. And this would be for families who do have perhaps a family member that is addicted and, wanting to have that on hand. I don't know where that stands now. I don't know if any of you have heard much about that. The trying to make Narcan an over-the-counter, have access over the counter.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you, Jen. So a couple points to that of what you said, Caroline. So a big thing right now is I'm sure some of you have heard, there's a national shortage of Adderall, which is affecting a lot of families with children who have ADHD and ADD, because there is that shortage of medication. Children are being medicated, and as you get into those older grades, there have been cases of adolescents getting, substances that are illicit that do have fentanyl in them. So for that, that's something that we as a coalition really want to push on, just raising awareness right now for parents who do have children with ADHD, to be cognizant of that and to make sure that their children are receiving, there are external supports available, whether it be through primary care providers, counselors, through the school, just connecting any students who are struggling, who maybe aren't on, who are taking less medication than they were before, to make sure that they're getting the support they need so we can prevent situations like that from happening. And then, Caroline, I'm sorry, what was your second point, the second thing you were talking about?
I had to unmute myself again. Okay. I was just asking if you'd heard about making Narcan available over the counter. I think there is an initiative to do that, but I don't know where that stands right now.
Yes, so I actually have to look into that, but I do know that if you go on our website, to wingsofhope.org, eastonwingsofhope.org, and click on the Get Help link, and if you scroll down, you'll see a quick link that says Narcan, and going to that page will actually provide a list of places where you can access Narcan free of cost.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, for families, especially that do have a family member that is struggling with addiction.
Most definitely. And because, we are seeing that different substances are being laced with it, because as Mia said, it's cheaper, and it's highly addictive. So, if you're selling it and your customers are becoming addicted to it, it's an easier way for them to make a profit. And so awareness is really key here, because it is, it's an uphill battle to prevent the circulation of the drug. But the more people that are aware and that are equipped with preventative measures such as, and harm reduction measures such as Narcan, the more deaths. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to prevent.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, the work that all of you are doing is just so important, and we're very grateful for that.
We're very grateful for you.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming and sharing that with us and sharing your experience and where you're headed with it. And,
Michelle, may I just add?
Absolutely.
Anyone that puts a comment in the Q&A, please type in your name and address so that I can read the comment. There was a nice comment that I'd love to read, but I can't because the person's name and address are not listed. So if I could just remind the audience for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Just giving Chrissy a second.
Again, I need the name and address. Thank you.
So next up is discussion and possible vote to approve a bench at Oliver Ames High School. Chrissy?
Thank you. A few months ago, our beloved staff member and math department chair, Mary Romans, passed away from a very long battle with cancer. We have Joanne Kaufman, Kelly Kavanaugh, and Matt Auger here to present the request to have the OA faculty and Best Buddies build a bench to honor the memory of Mary Romans. It will be funded through donations to help pay for the materials to build it. So I'm going to, at this time, turn the presentation over to Kelly, Joanne, and Matt to present on this wonderful project.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. I'm so grateful to the community for the way they have stepped up and found ways to honor Mary over the past 4 or 5 months. And this is a real true collaboration of a bunch of different organizations and people that Mary had a major impact on in her time here. So I'm going to turn it over to Joanne and Matt, and I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the slideshow presentation that they've created for you. All right, can we see this? Great, thank you. All right, so Joanne, I'm gonna turn it over to you and then you just let me know when you wanna switch the slides, okay?
Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Hello, everybody. So the Best Buddies Math Department and the whole faculty and staff are proposing to build a bench in honor of Mary's memory. And you can switch the slide. We scouted a pretty interesting place to place the bench, which is on your screen right now. It's right across from the pond, a little ways behind the tennis court and against the trees, and it looks like it would be super peaceful. And the reason why we picked this is because Mary often walked and ran in her lifetime, and we used to always walk around this path. Okay, we can switch. So we're looking, the bench design we all decided on was a classic English bench design, and we wanted something that would hold up in the weather, like mahogany, cypress, or teak, or cedar we were looking for. And then dimensions were 42 for maybe a 2-person bench, not too big. And next slide, please. Funding would be from donations for materials or expenses. The DPW already offered to donate the labor for the installation, so we want to thank them. And we talked with David Trombley and got the okay and approval from them that that was a good place and it was an okay place to put the bench. Our inscription ideas on the bench are in memory of Mary Romans, and then one of our notes regarding a poem written by Mary Oliver, be present, grateful, positive, and let go. And that's our proposal. Any questions?
This is beautiful.
It is pretty. Any questions or comments? Nancy?
Okay, I think it's a great idea. Love it. Already donated. And you guys are terrific for doing this. I'm so glad Best Buddies and the math department and everybody's involved in this. And what a great choice of place for it. The other thing, though, so talking about bringing this bench to, we've had donations before in the past of like the computer room at the middle school. Nobody came to us ahead of time and said, we're going to be doing this, or art supplies or this. So I just feel bad that, you guys went, this is great. I love the presentation. Don't get me wrong. And Joanne, you did a great job. Good girl. But it's, when we get these donations, we're so happy to have them. And I don't think that there's a rule or a policy or anything. The bench has come to us and we'll accept this donation with gladness and and I'm glad for the DPW to be placing it in its spot. But my question is to the committee is, do we need to have things that are going to be coming to us, or can we just accept them when they're being donated?
So I think that that's, I mean, after tonight, that's a
Yes.
bigger conversation with the subcommittee. How we want to, do we want to divide things up like that, and what would that look like? But I think that's kind of a subcommittee, just because we're working on that.
But my
And I know,
understanding is because this is a structure that is going to be placed on the property,
yeah,
that is why it needs to be voted upon.
okay,
So it's actual approval of the bench being placed on the property,
right,
not necessarily the donation of it, but
right.
that
Well,
it's actually placed on the
I
property.
kind of, I was kind of relating it to the DJ tree that's in the courtyard. Like, we didn't know about that ahead of time until it was, I don't believe we knew about it ahead of time, maybe we did, until it was donated. And again, Michelle, yeah, we'll talk about this on our naming committee, but thank you to Kelly and Joanne and Matt. You guys are awesome, and I can't wait to sit on that bench.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to stop the vote tonight, Chrissy. I think it's just something that is part of that process that's going on with that subcommittee.
And I will make a motion to accept this bench at Oliver Ames High School.
We get a second?
Okay, with Michelle, I'll second it.
Absolutely. Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
That's great. Thank you guys for doing that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, so next up is update and possible vote on capital plan. Chrissy?
Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay. David Twombly will be presenting updates to the capital plan that we have. So he is being moved over, and I will be sharing my screen for him.
There we go. Okay. All right. So we just have a couple of small updates to the FY24 capital plan. I think that Alicia had presented the overall capital plan several weeks ago to the committee. So the two changes after we met with Connor and David Field, we also, I think we had Perkins Eastman was at a meeting. We talked about the security upgrades and how much it would cost. And so that kind of triggered a couple of things. So the first one, that's the small change, is the security system is going to require that we hire not only a designer, like an architect, but it's also going to require us to hire an OPM. So this would be similar to a MSBA project, similar to the Bland James, when we've done some roofing projects. When you get over like a certain threshold in dollars as far as construction, it triggers different requirements. And one of the requirements is that in this particular case, because it's going to be, a few $1 million overall over a couple of years, it requires us to hire a owner's project manager. So we're in the process of going out to bid for that. So we updated the amount on that to $750,000. Again, that's an estimate at this point. The other item that we upgraded or updated was the security upgrade and phones overall cost. And basically, I think when Alicia had met with you previously, they had talked about upgrading one building at a time. But after talking to Perkins Eastman and Connor and David Field and getting some of their input, they felt that we would kind of update systems as we go along. So it might be like a motion detector might get, like all the motion detectors at all the schools may get upgraded. So that would be a system. So so in that particular case, what we came up with an estimate, we're going to put in $1,214,834 for the actual upgrades to a system. This would be probably over a couple of years. So we would probably come back next year after we do the upgrades this year or this coming fiscal year. We would probably come back next year with our capital request and do some more upgrades. But this would be the start of the process. Again, we have to hire an owner's project manager, similar to PMA that works on Bland James. They would help us select a designer. They would help us oversee the project. Again, it's a multi-million-dollar project to do all the security at the Richardson Olmsted School, Oliver Ames High School, and the middle school. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer some of the questions. If they're directly related to security, you may have to meet with Leisha to talk about that particular. If you get into finite stuff with her in executive session, but that's basically what we're doing with capital.
Jackie?
Hi, sorry. Yeah, so with the upgrade for all of the schools, so are you looking to tie it into the same kind of systems that we have at Blanche Ames, or would they, because the schools are older, would they be a different kind of system? I mean, I know I'm not asking for details by any means, but just kind of big picture.
Yep, you're absolutely right. We want to mimic exactly what we have at Blanche Ames, and so that's why we've been kind of talking to PMA and Perkins Eastman a little bit, trying to get their input. We also have some other companies that have been involved with the Blanche Ames School, and so it's a very good question, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. That way we have the same systems across all the schools, most likely not to get too far out there, but as they work on the new DPW, fire, and police station, they would probably also look to use a similar system, so everybody's on the same system. It helps when
everyone's trained on the same system, and you have the same people with maintenance that understand.
Yeah, exactly. The maintenance is a big part. I found, like, when I first came here to Easton, we had all different vendors that were doing maintenance on, could be the same exact piece of equipment, but it might be at a different school or on the town side. So what we've tried to do is have the same vendors, so we all know, like, yep, that person handles the alarm system, that company handles the generator or whatever it is. So, but that's an absolutely good question.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Jen?
This might be premature, and maybe this is what the OPM needs to do. But do we have a sense for the total long-term costs, like this 1.2 million? Do we have an idea? Is that half, a third?
It's probably
20%?
a third. I think it's going to be multi-million dollars. I mean, we haven't gone out to bid or anything yet necessarily. I mean, Perkins Eastman kind of gave us a rough number for this one here. But again, with equipment right now, it's like prices are really high. Trying to get equipment, there's a backlog, so it's just we're kind of in difficult times as far as that goes. But in general, yeah, that's it would be over maybe 2 or 3 years where we would do this project.
Okay. And is that why I honestly had a little sticker shock at the OPM cost? It jumped off the page at me as something as comparable to some of the estimates that we had done on some of the school work initially, that was paid for. We had, X amount of money went to, do this design and scope work for $1 million. So,
okay, so this would be for both the architect or designer and the owner's project manager. So it's for both, but it is a little bit high. I think after we talk, we'd rather go a little bit high, and hopefully those numbers come in lower instead of going to town meeting twice or whatever. So it might be a little bit inflated. I agree, but I think that was the methodology.
Okay. And then just to understand, so the OPM is with the project from start to finish. That's not just somebody putting together a bunch of, doing some site work, getting some estimates, putting a plan together, handing it off, and then they disappear, right?
So they work for the town.
The multi-year engagement.
So they would come at the very beginning. They would help us put out to bid. We'd have to go out to bid for a designer. So they would help us put together the request for proposal. They would be there at the beginning. They would listen to our input. They would kind of do the closeout, so including the designer, but the OPM would kind of represent the town, represent the school district.
Okay.
The amount of work they do on these projects is absolutely invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I just know it's a big number, and I want folks who may have to vote for it later to understand that this is not just a one and done design where, somebody works for a couple of months and hands us a design and disappears. It's a partner.
Yeah, they oversee any subcontractors. I mean, they oversee the whole project all day, every day until it's finished.
Great.
Yeah, because this might involve multiple trades. You might have electricians that could be involved as far as pulling wires, and you may have carpenter type people working on doors. So it involves a few things.
Thank you.
So with that, I guess, I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion to approve the amended capital plan. It would be for a total of $2,739,834.
I'm gonna hand over the chair to David. Got David.
Well,
Go
he
over
is
to
the chair
practice.
somewhere else, so.
Exactly why I feel about it. I know he is. You could tell.
And I just along the same lines that Jen just said, just to remind people, the money that comes out of capital funding is not coming out of our operational budget. Those funds can't be commingled. You can't take capital funds and use for operational. You can't take operational and use for capital. I'll make that motion.
All right. Do we have a second?
Star second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, great. Thank you.
Hey, so now we're gonna move on to the next item.
Hold on, David, hold on. You're not
Sorry
running
about
the
that.
meeting. You're gonna have Michelle, call that.
That's okay. I'm gonna go have dinner. Go ahead, David.
I'm going to town.
You do your thing. I don't even know what we're on anymore. Okay, vote to approve computer specialist contract. David?
Okay. So, all right. So I have John Souza here, who is pretty close to this. This is Computer Specialist is a company that's on the state bid list, and they're under ITC 73, which is a state contract. But they're also going to do some work with us, and John could explain this a lot better than I can, related to the E-rate. We get a discount when we purchase technology. So when we purchase licensing, when we purchase hardware, we get a discount because they're on state contract and they come under the E-rate. So I think you get a 40% discount on hardware and licensing, which is a really good thing for the district. But John found this company. This was the only company that was interested in doing work for us under the E-rate. So with that, I'll turn it over to John, and he can, I don't know if I covered it all, but John can cover any kind of other things I left out or answer questions.
You're on a roll. I think you got it all. So I usually get a bunch of quotes back on my E-rate program, and E-rate, it's like the federal libraries and schools program, and they subsidize your infrastructure if it qualifies. I couldn't get people to sell me stuff. So I found Custom Computer Specialists. They're a local company, and they're on the state bid list, and they gave me a good price, and we'll give 40% off.
Any questions? Caroline?
I just want to say, as I've said once in the past, John, I just think you've been a phenomenal technology director for us. And here you are just saving us tons of money on top of everything else. So I'm just very happy that you're with the district.
Hey, thanks.
Jen?
Just to clarify, there's no money attached to this. This just allows us to enter into business with Computer Specialists when we need to purchase items.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy?
Thank you. You say that this is a local company. Where are they located? Because it says New York on this. Looks like Long Island.
I think they're out of, I think they've got an office out of Rhode Island, but they've done a lot of great work with local schools. Like they just saved Whitman Hanson. They had a real huge cybersecurity breach.
Okay,
and they came in and bailed them out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I make a motion to accept the computer specialist contract.
Have a second?
O'Neill, second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Great. Thank you.
All right, have a great night, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
David, you're not staying on to run the meeting?
What's next?
I got to watch a couple hockey games. We'll talk later. Bye.
Bye. All right. Vote to approve the BICO, Bi-County, collaborative agreement. Chrissy?
So BICO has made some amendments to the collaborative agreement and requires signatures from each member district, as well as the Commission of DESE. DESE is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The changes include, you'll see on page 1, section I, adding Seekonk Public Schools to the collaborative. Also on page 3, each board member shall be entitled to 1 vote on behalf of each appointing member district represented. And on page 14, upon receipt of a member district request to initiate proceedings to terminate the agreement, the board must abide by 603 CMR 50.11, DESE Education Collaborative Closing Guidance, and the terms of the agreement to ensure an orderly closing. This requires a signature from the school committee chair.
Does anyone have any questions? You want me to wait, Jen? Are you reading it?
No, yeah, there was one thing I just wanted to see if Chrissy, do you know what the language for page 3, section V, comma A read previously?
I'm not sure, but I can. Oh, hold on. The agreement is here. This is the new agreement.
Yeah, this is the amendment, right? Anyway,
Okay.
it's fine. I was just curious to see if because it seems so straightforward. I was like, what's changing?
Right.
But it seems like a very reasonable statement.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if some districts potentially have multiple members, and if that's the case, then potentially a vote only happened per district and not per member. So this clarifies that.
Okay.
You all set?
Thanks.
Then can I get a motion to accept the amendments to the Bi-County Collaborative Agreement?
Wiseman, so moved.
Can I get a second?
O'Neill
Stars.
second.
Just waiting for you.
I have a little countdown in my head, how long does
Roll call
Sorry.
vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Great. Next up, vote to approve the pep rallies for the WISE contract. Chrissy?
As Leisha mentioned at the last school committee meeting, Daryl Green, a former professional National Football League football player, Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winner, and known as the fastest man in the NFL, is scheduled to come to the district on April 24th and 25th to speak to high school and middle school students, especially student athletes, about dangers of vaping. The contract is in the packet, and due to the price, it needs your approval.
Anyone have any questions? Comments? Jackie?
Thank you. So I appreciate the answers to some of the questions that we've had. So I know I had asked what was the average cost we paid for other speakers, and it was significantly less than this. So does this cost encompass, or does this contract, the cost that's in the contract, does that encompass all costs associated with him? So I think it's $36,000. So is that everything? Are there any kind of potentially added on fees that just aren't in the contract that we should know about?
Yeah, so I have not been involved in the detailed planning of this event. Dr. Cabral has done that, but it is my understanding that there is additional fees for airfare, for hotel, for some T-shirts that are requested for the students to wear, as well as some banners that will be created.
Do you have any idea what that amount is?
I don't off the top of my head. I would assume it would be a couple thousand more.
Okay. And I know these funds are coming from grant funds, but what does that mean? Exactly what grant are they coming from?
They have been noted to come out of ESSER 3.
Is it ESSER 3 or ESSER 2?
I have in all of my documentation of the grant management, ESSER 3.
Okay, and when does, I know that with the ESSER funds, there's a certain time limit after which if they're not used, they expire. What is that time limit?
ESSER 3 expires September 2024.
September 2024. And I also know with these funds, there are qualifications. You can't just use them for whatever you want. I know they're one-time funds, so it's not like you can use them for personnel or salaries or anything like that. Can you tell me like the general categories that it can be used for?
Sure. So I will tell you that ESSER 3, 20% of our overall costs have to be directly related to student learning loss. So some of the categories that are in that we can utilize the funding for are salaries. Like I said, I do know that we tend to stay away from that because once the salaries expire, once the grant expires, then we have to lay people off, and that's not ideal. And this is a finite grant. We also can purchase contractual services, so for any type of professional development that we may need. We can use the money for supplies and materials. And let me just get the exact categories here. Hold on one moment. Okay, so it's instructional, professional staff, contractual services, supplies and materials, and other.
And do you know how much in ESSER 3 we got in total?
Yes, we received $1,081,867.
And how much of that has been earmarked already?
All of it, which is including this amount.
Okay. And is there, I'm having a little trouble with the cost of this. It just seems kind of out of what we usually do. So is there, so I have a couple of, I apologize, I'm monopolizing this, but I have a couple of questions. The first is, are there needs that fall within this ESSER 3 that immediate needs that we're not able to, are there other immediate needs that these funds can be used for, I guess is a better way to ask that. Are there like supplies that schools aren't getting that they need? Is there like an interventionist or just?
We are in the process right now of going through our budget requests with our principals. So I know, for example, our high school did separate their budget requests between supplies and staffing. So to answer your question, yes, there are supply needs within the district. The funding source, I don't know if we'll be able to account for that within our operating budget yet or not.
I know that he is coming to work. Is it the 80? What is it? The name of the group? The 84. Okay. So to address the vaping issue, which we're all very concerned about. I'm having a hard time with the amount and just how effective speakers are with kids this age. I'd really like to hear from other school committee members because I'm struggling with this a little bit.
Jen?
Jackie, I appreciate the questions you put forth because I have a lot of the same ones. So thank you for getting them out there. And I share your concern that it seems like a big investment, and I haven't seen evidence that this is effective. You know what I mean? Which is hard, right? It's really hard to quantify that. But I did some research, and I'm not seeing anything out there that's rating this program as like a premier program. So I don't know if there's additional information out there. I don't know how this particular program, got on the radar of the district, if it was recommended by somebody, if there's another peer organization or somebody else who has used this and can attest to the effectiveness of the presentations and the engagement of students, right? I mean, I know that Oliver Ames for many years had a speaker series, right? So they were kind of these scheduled, I think it was monthly, and my kids would come home and it'd say, oh, what was the speaker today? I don't know. I just took a nap. You know what I mean? Like, I would hate for us to make this investment and have it not be impactful, and where maybe this funding could be used and spread out to something that could be impactful. But I appreciate that we don't know what that is, and we've been rolling this ball up a hill for a really long time, and I totally understand, Dr. Cabral's urgency around, okay, we've tried a lot of these things. We haven't done this before, where we've brought in a high profile speaker who is, has that bit of athlete and celebrity aura, to cover this, versus, maybe bringing in somebody who comes from more of a traditional health or other type of background. Personally, I went and looked up, we haven't had her here for a long time, but Dr. Ruth Pody, who had presented multiple times many years ago, and I pulled up one of her videos that's available online, and it was dated. It was from maybe 2016, I think, but it talked about adolescent health, brain development, vaping, and marijuana, and she was speaking to a bunch of middle schoolers, and engagement was high. There was good rapport. So I'm just, it's a lot of money, and it's also an unknown, right? Again, I haven't really seen much that says, he's done this number of presentations and it's been really well received, and student surveys have done this, and faculty felt like that. So I would love to have seen more to kind of back up, what the program. And again, like, did a search online, and I didn't see much out there about what the messaging is, and again, kind of testimonials from other places that he has spoken. So I hope that information is there and available. And again, I don't know if other people share these concerns. If we don't push it forward tonight and need to reconvene later, maybe that's some of the information that we can get in the meantime.
Caroline?
Jen, actually, I'm glad that you addressed the issue of efficacy, because that has been something I've been trying to find as well, doing some extra research. Even if there were just a before and after, forms for kids to fill out or something like that, because there's really no evidence that I could find that this has been sort of it's a tested program that is effective. And it reminds me a little bit, I don't know if well, I'm sure you all remember the DARE program, but for many years, when I was first on school committee, I kept begging the superintendent to move to another program, because there really was very solid evidence that the DARE program was completely ineffective. In fact, there was strong evidence that in suburban communities like ours, the effect of the DARE program was actually in the negative. I mean, drug use increased following the introduction of the DARE program. But people just kept going along because it was sort of a popular program, and it was sort of a political issue a little bit with the police department, and it was just a completely ineffective program. And finally, I convinced Bill Simmons for us to pull out of it. But you know, I sort of feel like this is in the same category. It sounds sort of exciting. It sounds like a nice idea. You've got this really, really outstanding athlete. Kind of exciting, I guess, but I don't understand why there is a thought that that would be more effective than, say, you know, a brain scientist to come in and talk about the effects of vaping on the young brains that we are charged with caring for. You know, I kind of feel like we need an evidence-based program. I mean, that's, do you know how we even kind of came to choosing this particular presenter? Chrissy, do you know how we even found him? I mean, he seems like a great guy. Don't misunderstand me, but that, you know, I just feel like we want to do something for the kids that's going to work, and that there's some evidence that at least it's likely to work.
Yeah, sure. I think it's my understanding that Leisha met him at an event that she was at.
So I'm sure he's very charming. I mean, by all accounts, he's a terrific guy. I think that Jen's point, and I already was thinking in those terms, is very well taken. We don't really have any indication of whether this is an effective 2-day presentation. It sounds like we could be getting into the 40,000 category, which is a lot, particularly when you say that the principals haven't even had an opportunity yet to talk about their, you know, most urgent needs that could well be funded with. I mean, I thought that we were talking about a deadline of the end of this year for the funding that was available, but you're talking about September 2024. That's a long time to come up with other important initiatives potentially.
And if I can add, I think, you know, that timing is coincidental, right? That we had the students who had been to CADCA who are coming back with ideas, and they've been able to network with their peers. So, you know, would this funding be better put towards some of their ideas and things that that they're thinking about and suggesting? I don't know. It's a tough one again, because, you know, we don't have the benefit of, okay, here's this person and here's the program and these are what the materials look like, and they've done this at you know 50 other schools, and, you know, student survey said this. I would really like to see that kind of information before making an investment this big.
I know he was last in Virginia at a school district, but I don't have any testimonials. I understand and appreciate your concerns.
Chrissy, or actually I should ask Michelle and the rest of the group, would anybody be amenable to tabling this, even if we had to have an extra short meeting? I kind of feel that since Leisha's the one who kind of found this guy and seems very excited about him, I mean, to be honest, she does. You know, would it make sense for us to take a little more time to try to find some research indication of whether there's any documented effectiveness, you know, that we could at least use to justify continuing with this large an expense? I mean, I feel a little reluctant to just say no when we haven't heard from Leisha, who initiated this idea to hire this guy, right? So how would people feel about just giving us a chance to do a little bit more research, but also have maybe Leisha, maybe she has reasons that we haven't heard for believing that this would be a very effective intervention for our kids. I don't see anything online, at least, that would indicate that this would be a very effective intervention. But obviously, I haven't looked at everything there is available, and we haven't talked to schools that have used him, right? I mean, you're saying that we know that he was in a Virginia school, but that's not much to go on.
Yeah, I have not spoken to anyone, so I'm not sure if Leisha has.
I would. Sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
I am struggling like most of you with, I mean, this is a huge amount of money. And if we only have this amount of money left, giving it basically all to one basket, one person, when there's so many other things that, like the lists that might be coming from admins. I love your idea about the presentation that we just saw. They may benefit from a smaller portion of this, and still getting somebody to address the vaping, but somebody that's more in line with what we typically do, so that we can spread the wealth and spread the resources to a variety of causes, because we do have a lot of needs. And I almost think we would be doing a disservice to them to choose one pricey person when there are other options for that need that are maybe a little bit more reasonable and allow for other needs to be met in other groups that are trying to do good things in our schools too. So I would actually be more in favor of just not pushing this on, but that's just me.
Do we know? I don't see anything in the contract that was presented to us around by when it needs to be signed. I know I would imagine it's fairly soon because the presentation dates that were proposed are about a month out.
Yeah, so the dates proposed are the end of April. So I know we have another school committee meeting scheduled for April, the beginning of April. But again, I know that flights need to be booked and hotels need to be booked and materials need to be ordered.
It might be helpful also to kind of have a cost estimate on those things, because it could be a lot more than we think. When we say a couple $1,000s, I mean, who knows these days? You know, I'm hearing about airfares that have quadrupled in some cases. So, you know, we might be on the hook for a lot more than we're even estimating. I sort of thought the 36,000 was a lot to begin with, and then to know that there's going to be add-ons that may amount to quite a bit of additional funding. That makes me nervous.
The payment terms in the contract draft that we have do say that fees and reimbursable costs combined shall not exceed the 36,245
really?
that's in there. Yeah,
Yes.
and then also that there shall be no further costs, fees, or reimbursable charges due to the contractor under this contract unless said fees and or costs are so set forth in writing. So maybe there's an addendum to this or some additional documentation, but that might help clarify whether or not there could be additional fees, or if this estimate includes some of those other costs.
So I have another wondering. It's my understanding that actually our vaping numbers have been going down over time. I don't know what 2022 was or if 2023 is available, but they have been going down. So and I'm not diminishing the problem at all, but the amount of students vaping, thankfully, is getting less and less. And if we are spending this amount of money for a one-shot deal, we don't even know if those students are going to be in attendance that day, the ones who need to hear this. Where if we are taking that money and we divide it up into several differents, into a multi-pronged approach, we have a better chance of reaching the students who need it, because we're spreading it out in a variety of different ways, methods, and over time. Nancy?
Michelle, I absolutely agree with you. Watching the news too much, I think, but we've got gun issues, bullying, you know, vaping. Yeah, it's a big problem. The kids that went to the CAD Cup, such a great presentation, and I think I agree that this 36,000 plus could be used to spread out in other places. And maybe this man is a wonderful speaker. I don't know. I don't even know who he is, but I just feel like we need to reach more than a small corner of. and vaping may be more prevalent than I know of, but there's so many other issues to deal with, and the principals and the schools each need things. So I don't know. I think there's a better place to spend our money.
Jen?
So I do want to address, and again, the plural of anecdote is not data is one of my favorite sayings. But, I know that, in terms of tracking usage, right, we have the COVID disruption. I think anecdotally, and having kids of this age, I would imagine that that vaping, and particularly vaping THC, right? So I think maybe the vaping of flavored, supposedly non-nicotine, but turns out they all had nicotine in them products, right? So all of those are off the shelf. So I think it's less of an issue of students, going around vaping gummy bear flavored fluid or whatever. But there is, again, just from my own what I'm hearing, there's a lot of use of vaping THC products, and it's happening while kids are at school.
No, I agree with you, Jen. I mean, I know, Michelle, that there was an allusion to maybe the numbers going down. I don't believe that for a second. In fact, I think that had to do with, because of the pandemic, the collection of the data was, not as solid. So I think that, I don't think we can assume that vaping is actually in decline. I think it's actually increasing. Certainly talking to, well, I'll just say my daughter, who teaches in a district in Connecticut of, upper level kids, it's just out of control. And it's a very similar community to Easton, and I suspect this is nationwide. So I don't think we can necessarily hang our hats on the idea that there might be some data that isn't truly up to date that indicates there may be a slight decline. But the other issues, I think, are very well taken. The costs and the fact that we don't really even have information about what the principals are going to propose for their individual schools. And honestly, I'm quite influenced by the fact that it's September 2024. As I said, I was under the impression that the deadline was this year, which would make a difference. But I feel awful about not supporting something. Leisha has been so great about seeking out, tremendous programs for our school district, and she puts so much thought and effort into these things. I just almost feel like I wanted to give her a chance to kind of promote it again. But on the other hand, it does sound like we're all pretty well in agreement that that's a lot of money to spend when I can't imagine that we don't have other immediate needs that could be, that we could use this funding for.
Jen?
I'd be in favor of a follow-up meeting. Just so my own opinion is, I would be interested in giving Dr. Cabral the opportunity, since she is so close to this and has had contact with the speaker, to give us to give her the opportunity to present to us directly. So I would be in favor of that, if we were to consider that, versus just voting no today. And again, that's assuming that there would be time then to still complete the contract and move forward with the booking. If we were to, part of me, wishes that I weren't the only person who had reservations that it got approved and they came in and it was wildly successful, and we'd be able to say, phew, I'm glad we did that. I would love for that to be the outcome. There have been a few things over the years when I was in the ROPTA, when we were first doing Boosterthon, and they came in with all of their stuff, and I said, that'll never work here. And I was so happy to be wrong, because it 100% did. So anyway, I'm rambling.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you, though. I think giving Leisha a chance to, who knows? She may even, upon consideration, maybe watching this meeting, have some second thoughts herself. But I kind of am uncomfortable just outright turning down something that she brought to us, knowing how much thought she puts into everything that she does.
I do want to note that it may, as far as the cost goes, that may be inclusive of the flight and other things. It was my understanding that it wasn't, but then again, Leisha did work on the details of this, so it's very likely that I am wrong.
But it's possible you're right too. I mean, sometimes the way things are worded, it's
Right.
not rock solid to
But
say
regardless,
that
it would,
the contract.
the amount is over 36,000.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'll do whatever the committee wants to do. I'm still gonna have a problem with all our eggs in one basket when we have so many needs. And I'm not sure that that would change for me personally. I don't know what we want to do.
Caroline, you're on mute.
I keep trying to be responsible about muting myself, but then I forget to unmute. Anyway, Michelle, would you object to just the idea of giving Leisha a chance to tell us what her perspective is on this? And even if this meant, I mean, I don't know what we're going to do exactly about the next meeting because we don't yet have that word from the legislature about what kind of meeting we'll even be having. But if we could, we have before called special short meetings to address one topic, and workshops, usually we frame them as so that they're not, including public comment and things like that. But I just feel like out of respect for Leisha's bringing this to us, it may make sense to have her at least be sort of like a, what is it, the defense that the PhD candidates have to do. But
well, she may be able to fill in some blanks that we don't have, and it may not change our mind because it's like as Michelle said, it's still a lot of money being put in one bucket. But it's I think it's worth giving her the opportunity to explain why she thinks this would be such a useful program.
I'm trying to look quickly at the youth health survey, and I'm not fast enough to be able to find that data. I don't know. So
I have the data in preparation for the meeting. I do have the data here.
Can you share it with us, please?
Sure. So the data is split into lifetime use and past 30-day use. So Oliver Ames, the data summarizes from 2015 to 2017, 2019, and 2021. And for the lifetime use at Oliver Ames in 2015, it was 40%. In 2017, it was 44.1%. In 2019, which was right before the pandemic hit, was 33.9%. And in 2020, it was 20.1%. And then in the past 30 days at Oliver Ames in 2015, past 30 days use, in 2015, it was 28%. In 2017, it was 32.3%. In 2019, it was 16.3%. And in 2021, it was 9.4%. For Easton Middle School, the lifetime use in 2015 was 11.9%. In 2017, it was 7.7%. In 2019, it was 7.8%. And in 2021, it was 2.4%. And then in the past 30 days, usage of vaping in the past 30 days in 2015, it was 3.7% at Easton Middle School. 2017, it was 4.1%. 2019 was 3.3%. And 2021 was 0.6%.
So if I'm hearing correctly, it is decreasing over time.
That's data that's 2 years old coming out of a pandemic.
When would we have 2022 data?
We do the survey every 2 years.
Oh,
So it will be 2023, which we're in right now, but they're in the process right now of constructing the survey and getting feedback.
The 2021 data, the lifetime use, of course, would incorporate all the time the schools were shut down, the, that initial part of it's a big chunk of time. So I think that the 2021 statistics those are the ones that I think are a little shaky because of the pandemic, for that 2-year period, 19 to 21. Do you know if it starts mid-year? Do you know if it's like, obviously it's not all of 19 to 21, so would it be like December 31st, 2019 to December 31st?
It's typically administered in December, so December 23.
Okay.
This coming December is when it will be administered.
So it would have done all of 2020, which I think is sort of the problem year in terms of accurate data.
So I think we all agree that vaping is an issue. It needs to be addressed at some level. So it comes back to, is it a $36,000 issue and we don't have money for other things? Or is it I don't know what our average is. Our average like 7,000 to 10,000 for a speaker? Let's see. I was trying to go back and honestly, I don't
it really varies, and it varies on the length of time. So the one thing about Daryl Green is that he will be here for starting I think around 10 o'clock. The program is for the whole day at Easton Middle School, and then at the high school, which he will be working with smaller groups as well. And I think he might. You know what? I'm not even going to presume. I'll leave that to Alicia if that's what you want. But I did hear her say that I think he's meeting after school with some of the athletes. But again, I don't know the exact details. So typically, I'm trying to think. Chris Heron we've brought in before. Very powerful, very powerful speaker, and he is not that amount. I don't even think close to that amount. Otherwise, we have to have it approved by you. So I think typically, for example, when I brought in Tyrone Howard, who did 2 presentations for staff in the equity series for staff and for the community, he was around 7,000, and that I remember being pricey at the time.
But those were just like kind of one-time lectures for each group. So those were, my understanding from Leisha was that Daryl Green was supposed to be here for 2 days.
Right, 1 day at each school.
Okay. The way you put it, it seemed like he would then move. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, 1 day at EMS and then 1 day at OA.
So that is a much longer time than the typical speaker. It's not just a 2-hour or 1.5-hour presentation with questions or something.
Yeah. And I think she said, he'd be present during lunches and really, integrated into the school day, right? To have the opportunity to sort of interact directly with students in a, outside of the formal sort of speaker sitting in an auditorium full of fidgety kids environment. So, so I think, there's certainly value in that, and having that increased interaction.
Well, I'm still inclined to support the idea of thinking about this, maybe doing some more research, trying to find out if there is any data that supports this this program as one that's effective, and letting Leisha do what she would like to do in terms of trying to either convince us to support it, or maybe she herself will start to take into account some of our concerns I think she already is well aware that it's a pretty expensive program compared to what we usually have. But on the other hand, you know, there's research that talks a lot about these one and done, these 1.5, 2 hour presentations that, you know, you can have wonderfully dynamic speakers, but they, you know, the evidence is that that's not very effective. It's possible that, you know, what Jen alluded to, somebody being there to chat with students at lunch and with athletes after school and so on, that I mean, you could make the case that that would actually have a greater impact. I mean, I think we've all heard for years that those, no matter how exciting the presenters are, that usually everything is pretty much forgotten by about the 7th day after the presentation. So, you know, it's possible that just based on the different format, this would be something that, you know, would be beneficial to our kids. So I'd just like to have the chance to talk more about it with Leisha, you know, in a formal way at a school committee meeting. My personal preference right now.
So I think the question becomes if we table it and we have another conversation about it, is there a scenario that we're going to be okay with spending this much money on one person and not anything else? Is there a scenario where that's going to ever be okay, regardless of who the person is that's coming?
Well, doesn't it depend in part though on how we're able to parse out the value of a 2 full day with many kinds of sort of connections with kids? Pardon me?
It's one targeted.
One topic, yes, that is true. It's just about vaping, as I understand it. But I'm just talking. I was just alluding to the fact that, you know, if you did like an hourly rate for some of these other programs that we bring in, it may actually be somewhat comparable. You're right. The issue is different, but I don't know. I just think the vaping issue is much more current than maybe Michelle you're experiencing. I don't know. I mean, I was actually.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Caroline.
No, I'm sorry. I'm rambling at this point. So go ahead.
No, and again, I'm not saying that it's not important and it's not valid and it's not a real issue. I just want to make sure that we have a lot of real issues that we have. If we have very limited resources, what's the best way to spend those resources to address as many of the issues as we possibly can in an effective way? That's all I'm trying to say.
No, it's a point well taken.
Caroline, I do think that your hourly comparison is a good thought, though, just to throw that out there.
All right. So what would we all like to do?
Do you want, from a parliamentary procedure, do you want somebody to make a motion to table to a future workshop and then we can check availability or sometime next week when Dr. Cabral is able to give her availability? I'd be happy to make that motion if that's what you want to do. And if the motion succeeds, it succeeds. And if it fails, it fails. That's one thought I have, but don't really know. We haven't done this in a long time, right?
I think it's a good suggestion, Jen, because it is respectful to Dr. Cabral, who is the person who did bring this to us originally.
Okay. Michelle, do you have any other thoughts, or do you want me to make that motion?
Nancy or Jackie, do you have any other thoughts?
I do. I think even if you do the price per hour, it's still going to be high. He's dealing with the middle school for a little while on one day and going to the high school to deal with some students and lunchroom and athletes. So I don't know. I don't know who's vaping. probably totally out of the loop. Not like Jen probably has a more finger on the pulse than I do. I agree with Michelle and just saying that there's a lot of needs. And do we put $36,000, whether it's 2 days or 3 days? You know, if we're usually paying somebody 7,000 or 10,000, we get 3 people, 4 people, and you know, I don't know if Dr. Cabral will change my mind if I hear what she has to say about this. So I'd make a motion not to accept it, but I'm not doing that. That's what I would do if it was my turn.
I feel like we should at least give her an opportunity to speak towards this. It's unlikely I'm going to change my mind because of the cost. And again, I had thought it was from funds that were going. My dogs are very noisy. That were going to be expiring in the next few months. I didn't realize it was funds that were going to be expiring in a year. So I have a hard time expending this much money on this, but there might be things that I am not considering that she just, that we just don't know. So I feel like out of respect for her, I'm willing to see if there's anything else she wants to add to what we already know. And I think what Caroline brought up about, and Jen brought up about, has this been helpful in other districts? We don't have any data on that either. I think that would be really helpful to have if that's available, or just anecdotal data from speaking to other school districts that have used this program. But I mean, at this point, I don't see spending this money on this. But again, there could be something I don't know, and so I'm willing to table it and listen.
It does sound like we're all very concerned about the cost. I mean, I think that we're unanimous in that, but I feel like it really is a question of respect for the superintendent, having been the one who brought this to us, to, just ask her if there are things we haven't heard yet that would influence us to change our current position. There may be data somewhere that speaks to how effective this program is. But on the other hand, if there is none, that says a lot. And I think that is something we just need to be a little bit more on solid ground before we say we just don't see any data. Maybe find out if we just don't know where to look, or because if there is no data about efficacy, I certainly am not inclined to support it. But I'd just like to hear from Alicia first.
Okay.
Do you want Jen to make that motion, or?
She can, I mean, and we can vote however we want.
Okay. All right. So, so I make a motion to table item 9, the vote to approve pep rallies for the WISE, until we can, and to schedule a workshop where Dr. Cabral can be in attendance to give us more information. That's nice. I don't know.
O'Neill second, since Michelle's being quiet.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, no.
DeLuca, no.
Weissman, yes.
Star, yes.
This is kind of exciting. We never have a 3-2 vote these days. All those people that say we always agree on everything, case in point, not always.
All right. School committee schedule for 2023 to 2024. This is a first reading. I don't know if people have comments. Of course, we don't know yet what's going to happen with meeting types, but so for now we'll have to assume it would be back in person.
And just looking at the dates, looking over the dates, it's kind of funny, the November 16th, December 7th, and March 21st, they're all conference days. They're half days for some of the little ones, but also, like the high school and so forth. There's no holidays involved or anything like that. So it seemed fine with me.
Nancy, do you remember when what's the ceremony what's the ceremony that's always in October? The professional status?
Oh, so that would probably be October 5th, I would say. You could ask Lynn about that, but I would say October. It's usually the first one in October, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
And have we traditionally then started at maybe 6:30 or?
Right. You start the professional status like at 5, and then our meeting starts at 6 or 6:30, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's something we can always amend.
Yeah. And this is the first reading too.
So. In format.
Any other kind of standing? When's the retirement party usually?
June 6th.
All right.
It always lines up.
Okay, that's fairly early though. That's usually right, like
it's the
3 in the afternoon or something.
Yeah, Thursday after graduation. Yeah.
Okay.
And June 1st is the graduation in 2024.
Right.
Amazing. I remember when it was 1999.
Just to also note, I don't know if you already discussed this, that July and August only have one date in them. That's being proposed. If you want to add more dates, that's up to you.
And I was thinking about that too. And I just thought if there were things that we had to do, then we would create a meeting. But for now, leaving it at one each, I think is fine. I do.
Yeah, that was the norm pre-COVID, right? Pre-rushing through MOAs and all of that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we always had 2 meetings a month, but then I think when we got to COVID and we were meeting every day,
every day.
Week, so I think we meetinged out in 2020.
Well, I won't be here, but I do think that in the summertime we did just have one meeting in July and one in August, typically.
And like someone said, we can always add it if we need one.
We have to have a second reading though, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
It is first reading. So there's no changes we need for Lynn to make for the second reading. That's what I'm understanding, correct?
No, I mean, I know she had something circled at the bottom about whether to keep that or remove that. The notice about the, right. I mean, I just read something today, so hopefully we'll know in the next couple of weeks what they're gonna do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're good with this?
Well, I think since we have to do 2 readings, would it make sense to just do to change the start time for October 5th? Since we know that 6 will be too early.
Yep.
But do we know that for sure that it's that date? That's why I was saying we can amend it if we need to. I mean, we can if we.
Well, what if we looked into that and updated it for the next reading beforehand? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So we don't need to do anything with that other than the next meeting. Okay. Public comment.
There's one comment, and that is in reference to the presentation for Katka earlier, and that is from Katie Judge Duffy, 56 Seaver Street, Northeastern. She just a comment said, "Thank you to Easton Wings of Hope and the school committee for approving this opportunity for our students. my daughter had an incredible and eye-awakening experience.
That's awesome. All right, thank you. So we do not have superintendent notes. So assistant superintendent notes, Chrissy?
Thank you. So I'm sure in the school committee notes, someone will talk about the art show and Footloose. So I don't want to steal your thunder, although I will say that my husband did say to me afterwards about Footloose, he said, "Wow, that was really good." So it's always such a highlight of the year. So I wanted to let you know that this past Monday, we were really fortunate. We, about 10 of us, went to the district of Pentucket, which is close to an hour and a half away up by Georgetown, to watch. They hosted us to actually watch Wit and Wisdom, the program that we adopted, the literacy program, in action. So we went into second grade classrooms, kindergarten classrooms, as well as 2 fifth grade classrooms. Brent Conway is the assistant superintendent there. He has been a great resource for me on the science of reading and really understanding the implications and how to bring this to a district. And I just want to thank Pentucket School District. We were actually in Groveland for their hospitality. It just was a great experience for our teachers to actually see it in action. What Ann Weintraub and I were talking about how seeing this in action, it wasn't that their teachers were better than ours. We have fantastic teachers. It was just that they were able to see, one teacher walked away and said, "Oh my, these are my pilot teachers, by the way, the teachers that have been utilizing the program." And one of the teachers said, "I have been doing this one routine and it's taking 30 minutes out of my lesson. This teacher did it in 5 minutes and it was way more effective." So having models like that, seeing those instances was really helpful, and just want to share that with you. It was a wonderful experience. I also yesterday attended the WELLN, so it's Women Educators Leadership Network that MASS, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, sponsors. They have a conference every year, and I attended that conference yesterday at Holy Cross. Our keynote address was Darnisa Amante Jackson, who is a leader in the Ready work that we're doing through MASS and DESE. Ready is the diversity and equity series that we're participating in. She was the keynote, and the whole theme was this sense of belonging and what that means for our students and our staff. It was wonderful, and I can't wait to share some of the information with our administrators on how to ensure belonging is occurring, not only for our students, but also for our staff. This morning, we had our Title I information virtual coffee hour. Jackie was in attendance, and it was a rather quick meeting. Not many out of the school district attendees, but it will be good that I'll be able to put the slides on our website. There will be more information for families to find resources. I will let you know that we are planning on redoing our website hopefully this summer. So that is going to be wonderful, because we all know that our website is extremely difficult to navigate, and it's also very hard for us to house certain documents and things like that, because it's just a difficult website to difficult host. So those are just kind of the updates I have for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything for you. But there's a lot of really great and wonderful things happening with teaching and learning. It's really nice to see. I will say that we had a literacy leadership planning meeting and with our leadership team about the implementation of this work. And we're just consistently hearing from people that come to work in our district about all the wonderful things that they're seeing from us. These are outside people coming in. One presenter said to us that, she goes to districts and they're still on that COVID hangover, for lack of a better term, and that we are really we're putting that behind us and moving forward. And And so it's really nice for our staff to hear those words too, because I know how hard they're working to really kind of put that behind and do what's best for kids. So I'm just really proud of the work that's going on here at Easton. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. School committee notes. Caroline?
Well, I should have taken notes, but I'll mention just a couple of things quickly. Jen and I were both able to attend the Olive Ames High School dedication of the new digital display for basically it shows all of the people who have been honored and inducted into the Olive Ames High School Hall of Fame over the years. And it's quite an amazing, I guess you'd call it a huge device. It's at the high school in the atrium, and people can just search for the individuals who have been inducted into the Hall of Fame in any sport, both men and women, also coaches. It can be done by year or year of graduation or year that they were inducted, or there's even a way to type in the name of an individual, and then the person's picture will pop up with, you know, the information about their induction into the Hall of Fame. And it's quite snazzy. And apparently people are already, well, as Joanne Faust, who did a wonderful job, she called herself the Vanna White of the Olive Ames High School digital display, but she demonstrated all of the mechanisms, and it was really quite delightful, and lots of I think Hall of Fame members from the past were there, and also, you know, we had, of course, our athletic director and coaches and former coaches, all sorts of people like that. So it was really a very nice event, and I think it'll be a great addition. It replaced this huge display of trophies and you know, plaques, things like that, that really had just, there was really no more room to add to it. And also because of the way the sunlight comes into the atrium, the plaques were actually fading badly. So this is a replacement. All of the funding for it was through fundraising. The two major, well, there were three major donors, Bank of Easton and Northeastern Savings Bank, and there was also an anonymous donor who kind of leveled off the full donation. So it was a lovely event. The other thing I'll mention briefly, but unfortunately I did not, as I said, take notes, and I wish I had. CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, had a meeting last night, and they had Kristen Kennedy, who's head of, I think the title is Health and Human Services, maybe, for Easton. I should have her title correctly. I apologize that I don't. And also in conjunction with Tim Vamosi from the fire department, who works in conjunction with her. There are all sorts of community resources that have been added to address individuals who are challenged by mental health concerns. And it was really quite a presentation about all of the resources that are being made available, some of them quite recently. There's a new mental health liaison that is going to be working with the fire department, the police department. You know, there'll be these really important connections, because as we all know, when you have individuals who are disturbed and then they have an encounter with law enforcement or even emergency medical services, anything like that, it can be very difficult for them. And this is a way of training our first responders and also making sure that their approach to individuals who have mental illness is appropriate and helpful. Anyway, it was a great presentation, and if I had taken notes, I'd have more specifics, but I did want to mention that. And kudos to CPAC for bringing them to talk to their organization, and kudos to all of them for creating these resources for Easton.
Thank you. Jackie?
I have nothing tonight, Michelle. Thank you.
Nancy?
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Jen?
Are you covering all the music stuff, Michelle?
I think I have it all, but you can, if you want, and I can fill in the blanks.
No, you go ahead. I will talk about the art exhibit. I was not able to go, but I have a couple friends who did, and it's super, super impressive in person. And I did see there were a lot of photos that were shared by Ms. Shea on Twitter, and just the talent of the students is incredible. And it's just a great opportunity. I'm glad that the art department has that opportunity to work with the artist gallery at Patriot Place and get student works on display for the weekends. That was almost 2 weekends ago. 2 weekends ago. And then let's see, a lot of music stuff that Michelle will cover, but I will say I really enjoyed the musical. It's our kids and cast and crew and all the volunteers just put so much work into it, and it's always well done. So great job on that. It was a really fun show. And then spring sports are starting, but a couple of holdovers from winter sports, so that we had some exciting events for some of our hockey players this week. So the Oliver Ames boys ice hockey team won a team award for sportsmanship through MIAA and the Boston Bruins. And so their representative, junior Matt Lawson, was able to go to a Bruins game this week, and he was photographed with none other than Cam Neely, accepting the award on behalf of OA Hockey. So congratulations to Matthew on being selected to represent the team, and to the team and coaches, and again, all the volunteers that helped make that happen. And then Bailey, I hope I don't mispronounce her last name, Moores, who is a sophomore at OA and plays for the MOA, Mansfield OA. I think it's Foxborough. There might be another school in there, but the Girls Ice Hockey Collaborative won an individual sportsmanship award, and she was photographed with Linus Allmark, who's the goalie. So she was able to walk him into the game, and he was wearing a fabulous suit that coordinated with her jersey. So great experience, great photos coming out, and thanks to our athletes for always representing our town so well. Oh, and one more thing, I was able to attend the Mass Association of School Committees District 3 meet and greet. So our local district is working to get more in-person events as well as seminars on the agenda. So be on the lookout for more from them. It was a really great opportunity to talk to our peers in neighboring districts. There wasn't, it wasn't a night with an agenda. It was just an opportunity to sit and chat. So it was very nice to meet people. And MASC's legislative leader, who led at a workshop that was offered online a few weeks ago that I spoke about, is actually in our district. So I did get to speak to him in person, and he reassured me that, some of the issues that we brought up are at the forefront of what's being advocated for in the budget. So a couple of items, particularly transportation, and increasing the minimum aid increase from $30 to $100 per student. So that aligns with some of the priorities that MASS had articulated a couple of weeks ago. So I do think I don't know if it'll get us anywhere, but I have confidence that our legislative delegation understands and is hearing consistently some of the needs that we have and that are unique to other towns like us that are in that minimum aid bucket.
Is that all?
Yep.
All right. All right. Music is very, very, very busy. So if I forget something, Jen, jump in, because there was a laundry list of stuff. So the OA Jazz Band was one of two bands that received an outstanding band in Class A at the UNH Clark Terry Jazz Fest, which must be a new one. I don't remember Sean doing that one. They also, the jazz band also went to the Northeast MAJE Fest in Reading. On the 11th was the junior district concert, and I was able to go in the afternoon. There was a morning session and an afternoon, and I got to see the orchestra and concert band. And what the district is it's an audition type program. So Mr. Benson brings students from the junior district is middle school and some ninth graders, and they can audition for a part, and it's schools from all around, and so only so many kids get in. But what's really cool about it is it's very much like Bay State. They have all day Friday and then a half day Saturday, and it's the first time they've ever played together. And then there's concerts where they show what they've learned, and they come together as a big group. So that was really exciting to see, and to see our school represented in both of those. You talked about the art student art students art display. There's also our senior Summer Fest on March 18th, and that's very much like district. It's an audition type program. Senior just means it's the high school age group. And I know that we had students in that. You've talked about Footloose coming up. The OA Jazz Band was invited to the MAJE State Finals, and that's coming up on March 25th. So I'll be excited to see how they do there. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was robotics had their first competition last weekend. It was in Reading, Mass, and we came in, I'm going to say it wrong, I think 24th of 40, which is a marked improvement from the same tournament last year. But the really exciting thing was that we won a Judges Creativity Award for one of their design features on their robot, which is super exciting. And it was something that they had done. I don't speak robot, but it was a tank tracking system. It's how it moves around. It looks like tank tracks or whatever. And part of the things that it needs to do is it needs to be able to balance and not move, and also get around the field. And they were the only robot that had thought of that design. Everybody else had various versions of wheel design. So that was super exciting for them. And they had no idea that it's not usually an award that we think that we might be in the running for. So that was like really, really, really exciting. And then their next competition is coming up this coming weekend in Revere. So fingers crossed, everyone. And that's all I have. Did I miss anything in music, Jen?
No, you covered it all. I think there's a show choir festival coming up before our next meeting. So good luck to show choir. I think, yeah, I don't think it's this weekend. I think it's maybe the following weekend. But I can't read my own handwriting at this point. So
Michelle, I can't resist this. And of course, I'm leaving, so I can throw caution to the wind. My 4-year-old grandson does speak robot, and it's really very simple. You just have to do things like, I am a robot, But when you said you don't speak robot, I couldn't resist.
The president always says that phrase, and I'm like, I feel that. I'm a non-technical mentor. I'm in charge of the spirit, the safety, and the awards that they do.
It's so wonderful that you're still volunteering for robotics and that you put so much time into it. That's really terrific, Michelle. Now you just need to learn how to speak robot.
Great. All right. So before we go into executive session, our next meeting, unless we have one for the outstanding issue, is April 6th. So I would like to make a motion to enter into executive session and not to return to open session for the purpose of to comply with an act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements, to review and approve amended executive session minutes of 4/29/21, 8/23/21, 9/1/21, 9/30/21, 1/13/22, 1/27/22, and 2/11/22. And to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for Unit A, paraprofessionals, and SPEA, which is custodians, secretarial, clerical, and food service units. Do I have a second?
Wiseman second.
Roll call vote.
O'Neill, yes.
Grant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right. We'll see you in executive. Thank you.
Thank you.